Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at Phoebe. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting our first ever Phoebe card in the Pokemon trading card game. Having said that, it's kind of our first ever Phoebe card. You see, back in EX Power Keepers, we did actually get Phoebe Stadium, Phoebe being one of the Elite Four from the Hoenn region. And Phoebe Stadium actually saw a fair amount of play back in the day. It reduced the retreat cost of your Psychic Pokemon by 2. And like I've said, a bunch of people did actually play this. This made its way into a bunch of decks. But now we're getting an actual factual Phoebe card, a real honest-to-goodness Phoebe card. Now this makes me kind of delighted. I have a niece called Phoebe. Always nice to have a card with her name. Fun little fact, I have a car called Phoebe as well. And my brother named his kid Phoebe long after I called my car Phoebe. And he did not realise this until it was too late. And he essentially called his child after my car without realising it, which I find in no way absolutely hilarious. This new Phoebe, however, is absolutely going to have the back of Pokemon VMAX. So, if you want Pokemon VMAX to have a whole bunch of extra help, yay! And if you don't, I suppose I'm sorry? Now, our translation here comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet, which I'm assuming by now you probably could have guessed. And what we have here is a supporter card, which I'm assuming you already kind of knew. And it reads, during this turn, your Pokemon VMAX's attacks damage are not affected by any effect on your opponent's active Pokemon. Anything that would stop your VMAX doing damage, reducing damage, etc. to your opponent will be stopped here. Whoopsie daisy, ladies and gentlemen. Whoopsie daisy. You see, what Pokemon have gone and done, and this isn't some kind of unintended consequence, right? I showed you Cheryl a day or two ago. We'll talk more about Cheryl in a moment. But Cheryl makes VMAXs way better, but I think Cheryl was kind of an unintended consequence. Cheryl helps evolution decks, but VMAXs just happen to be evolution decks. This, however, is specifically for VMAXs. Like, there's no, oh, it happens to apply to VMAXs as well. No. This helps VMAXs. Explicitly so. And straight off the bat, you've got to say, this is just a massive slap in the face to Zamazenta V. Because Zamazenta V is like a really good Pokemon that sees a huge amount of play in Zacian decks. It is a legitimate, widely played Pokemon. And the reason it's so good is because it's got an ability that reads, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon VMAX. The entire point of Zamazenta is that it blocks Pokemon VMAX, and it wins games. I mean, the example I often give is against Eternatus. Because Eternatus VMAX cannot attack Zamazenta, so you're over to Eternatus. But you're talking 4 energy, 120, but you're going to be playing Metal Goggles, and this is generally played in a deck with Lucario and Melmetal. So it's actually 4 energy, 60 damage, which is extremely bad. And that means that actually you're just never going to get a KO on Zamazenta, and Zamazenta is going to, confidently 2-hit KO Eternatus V, just chill and KO it, while just taking almost no damage, and, after 2 attacks finally does 120 damage, Mallow and Lana can heal. And if you're playing a Zacian deck, especially with Lucario and Melmetal, and you come up against an Eternatus versus Zacian is not a particularly fair fight. Eternatus gets a 1-hit KO, Zacian doesn't. However, against Zamazenta V, it's also not a fair fight, but the other way around. Until a Phoebe comes out. Now, Eternatus plays Phoebe. Eternatus, assuming it's got a full bench of Darkness Pokemon, does 270 damage, which is a huge amount of damage, and then just goes and gets a KO on Zamazenta and goes about its merry way. Now, it is interesting to note that with a Metal Goggles and a Lucario and Melmetal GX attack, you'll actually have to do 290 to get a one-hit KO on Zamazenta, 230 plus the 30 for Metal Goggles plus the 30 for Lucario and Melmetal, and Eternatus will actually be 10 damage short, but then you remember that Eternatus plays Galarian Zigzagoon, often many of them, and it plays Scoop Up Net, usually many of them, and that dropping those 2 extra damage is not going to be terribly difficult. And if they don't get the Metal Goggles on there, or you play a Tool Scrapper, then it's a moot point and you'll get a KO anyway. Although at this stage it really is important to point out that Metal Goggles and Lucario and Melmetal, yeah, they're also turned off by Phoebe. So I don't need to muck around with Galarian Zigzagoon or any of that, because in the same way I'm turning off your ability with Zamazenta, I'm turning off the effect of Lucario and Melmetal's GX attack, and I'm turning off your Metal Goggles, so actually I am getting a really easy KO anyway. Ha! So it basically turns a matchup between Zamazenta and Eternatus from an all-but auto win for Zamazenta into an all-but auto win for Eternatus. That's how big an impact this can have. There is another Pokemon, of course, that this is a giant slap in the face to, and it is Decidueye. Decidueye has an amazing ability which prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon GX and V, and that will of course include VMAXs and Tag Team GXs. So again, if you're against this kind of deck with Decidueye, it can be an extremely difficult thing to do. I mean, go back to Eternatus. We've got Hooper that does 90 damage, but that's not enough. Maybe you play Spiritomb, but the problem with Spiritomb is that Decidueye is hitting the bench, and you need to get enough damage counters on to get a KO on Decidueye, but not enough to be in range of being KO'd by Decidueye, and Decidueye can often get 2 or 3 KOs at once, and it's really awkward. A good Decidueye deck will often just lock an Eternatus deck out of the game, but wait, here we go. Phoebe's got your back. Now, I have seen a few people point out, well, hang on a second, Wassy, what's Phoebe got to do with VMAXs, Gigantamaxing, Dynamaxing? Phoebe's a Gen 3 Elite 4 member, dealing with stuff that didn't come in until Gen 8. And on the one hand, yes, and I told you about Cheryl and how Cheryl will heal all of your evolved Pokemon while discarding energy to any you healed when you play it. And that Cheryl in Gen 4 over in the Diamond and Pearl era took you through a forest, healing your Pokemon after every fight. So thematically very appropriate. But not every supporter card needs to be thematically appropriate. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. The point, although if anyone does have a better explanation, I'd love to hear it in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice, you know the deal. The point is that Phoebe is just going to make VMAX decks so much better. Because as it is at the moment, if you're playing a VMAX deck, you are worried about Zamazenta. Now, Centiskorch isn't, because Centiskorch V can one-hit KO for 4 energy, and you can play Welder. So it's a 2-turn thing to get the energy on. Centiskorch V will match up very nicely, but Eternatus VMAX, Inteleon VMAX, basically any other VMAX is genuinely legitimately worried. Same thing with Decidueye. Are you playing a good non-GX, non-V Pokemon that can do 140 damage to take out a Decidueye in one hit? If you can't, things might be going very wrong. But now you can just play Phoebe. I mean, I showed you Victini VMAX the other day, and I'm legit excited about Victini VMAX. I went straight out and bought a playset of the Victini V from Sword and Shield because it's better than the new one we're getting. I think Victini is awesome, but I don't like, and to be fair, it's not really great against VMAXs anyway, but now all of a sudden you've got an answer to VMAXs. And don't forget Mewtwo here. Now what we really want is we want Versus Seeker so that we can play Versus Seeker to just reuse Phoebe over and over again. But Mewtwo will do, And like I've said, a lot of these decks are going to be playing Scoop Up Net anyway. And Mewtwo will put a supporter card from your discard pile on top of your deck. Remember, you've always got the Oranguru from Sword and Shield to swap the top card of your deck with a card in your hand. So Mewtwo to put it on top of your deck, and then Oranguru to grab it and put some other card on top of your deck. So it's not like you need to play 4 Phoebe just on the off chance. You play 1 Phoebe, and if you're against Eternatus, you go for it. Also, bear in mind, you will have Eldegoss, and a bunch of decks are playing Eldegoss at the moment, although that tends to be more as a one-off. There are ways to reuse Phoebe pretty easily, which means all of a sudden you're coming up against one of these decks, like Decidueye, like Zamazenta, which is trying to block you, and they're not blocking you. And I could go further. I told you earlier in the video about how Zamazenta's actually not a problem at all, because it's not just turning off the ability, it's also turning off Lucario and Melmetal's ability, and it's turning off Metal Goggles. But it's anything that would stop you attacking or try and reduce damage done to, etc., you just run straight through. And this can be huge. You see a fighting Pokemon playing Stone Fighting Energy, trying to reduce damage done by 20. No, it doesn't. And that's kind of my point here. There is so much that will stop you attacking or try and prevent a KO by reducing damage, etc. And all of a sudden you play Phoebe. And what Phoebe does is it gets you a KO you shouldn't be getting. I mean, sometimes it will literally turn an auto loss into an auto win, which is brilliant. But other times it will just stop you doing a bit less damage, which means you get a KO, which means you win the game. I'm giving Phoebe between 4 and 5 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. If you're playing a VMAX deck, Phoebe has got to be an automatic inclusion, because there's so much that could come in and try and ruin your day. And when we're talking about a card which is an automatic inclusion in every VMAX deck, you're probably talking about one that's pretty gosh darned good. And with all the ways we've got to reuse it at the moment, yeah. Fine, it's not good in a non-VMAX deck, but that's not the point. Between this and Cheryl, Pokemon VMAX has got a lot better this past weekend. Something to bear in mind. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you lovely people. I want to know what you think about this card, so go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.